A big troop withdrawal in Iraq might cost you big money. Here's how. When the government pulls troops out of a country, it hires contractors to do some of their jobs. And guess what? Contractors are more expensive. Right now, there are about 175,000 U.S. contractors in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, of those, around 25,000 are security contractors. Those are the ones who do the jobs that our troops would otherwise do. So how many more will there be after the Iraq drawdown? And how much will it cost you? We asked Arizona Senator John McCain. Senator, recently I spoke to one of my colleagues who works out at the Pentagon, Jennifer Griffin. I had her try to find out how many contractors, civilian contractors we have in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the estimate she said, the best you could get, it's rather fluid, but it's either up or down from about 250,000 people. How can we afford that, number one, and what are they doing?
Well, I think a lot of them are people who are working on projects, you know, things that are part of the rebuilding effort of Iraq. There are some of them who are paid for security reasons, and obviously if we have a very large State Department presence there of civilians, they need protection, and apparently they're going to be provided by some of these, quote, civilian contractors. Well, that's very, very expensive. It's very expensive, far more expensive than the use of U.S. troops. And so when we say we are withdrawing and down to 3,000 troops, then what's the point here? It can't be just to save money.
Well, that's what I don't understand. It seems to me that it's possible we could draw down 20,000 troops, but then put in 20,000 contractors, and so now we can go out to the public and say we're down 20,000 troops. Meanwhile, we've got 20,000 contractors going over there to do the work of our military, which is to protect the embassies or whatever.
Well, I think that they are saying that these military contractors can do the security requirements while our military could do the counterinsurgency, the intelligence, the air assets, and the peacekeeping roles. But at the same time, if we are pulling out everybody but 3,000, then obviously we would have to increase those that are there for security reasons.
Is the reason we have contractors, I mean, isn't that something that traditionally our military did? I mean, how did we all of a sudden come into the general, having these civilian contractors in these war zones?
At the beginning, it was because we did not have sufficient numbers of troops to carry out the whole counterinsurgency effort that we were involved in, which then meant hiring former, and they're all 9 out of 10 of them are former military people, to do basic security duties, which didn't require these special operations and other capabilities. Now it has become larger and larger to the point where it has become a very expensive part of our effort in both Iraq and Afghanistan.
Well, as a citizen, and I hate to use the word, but I feel a little bit had when I find out we're drawing down our troops, and I think, well, we're leaving Iraq, but we're really leaving 250,000 people that we're actually paying for, that are ex-military, and it's because we don't have the men and women to do it, so we've hired these outside people. So we are leaving a force there of some kind.
But I would like to remind you again, the significant number of these are the actual contractors. They're out there helping the Iraqis build things, to restore bridges, infrastructure, those kinds of activities. But
we're paying for it, right?
Yes, we are paying for a lot of it, indeed.
Are they paying for any of it in Iraq?
We're paying for it. I don't think the Iraqis are paying very much, if any. But we continue to believe that once their oil revenues are restored, that they will pick up more and more of the expenses.
Is there any indication that's even happening? I mean, you know, we seem to know a lot more about our military than we do about our contractors.
Well, what is disturbing was the recent Inspector General's report that some $20 to $30 billion, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, have been wasted and misspent. And in the case of Afghanistan, in some cases, the money has actually gone to the Taliban. Now, that is not an acceptable use of the taxpayer's dollar.
It's outrageous. I mean, it's horrible.
It is outrageous.
Is there anything you can do about it? I mean, or I can, you know, I guess I can report on it. But I mean, well, 20 or 30 billion dollars is, you know, we get used to these big numbers, but that's extraordinary.
I might correct myself. I think maybe that was all in Afghanistan. The same thing happened in Iraq.
So it's twice as much.
I don't know. I honestly don't know the number, but there has been a lot of waste over the years in both Afghanistan and Iraq in a noble effort to try to help them rebuild their country. But clearly, there's been a failure of oversight and accountability.
Right. Now, come the end of the year, let's say we pulled out all our troops, didn't even leave 3,000, but let's say you're a general contractor, or you're a civilian contractor, and you've got a 5-year deal with the U.S. government. Do you leave at the end of the year as well and get paid your whole contract, or do you just stay there and do your work and hope for the best?
I think if you're a civilian contractor, you have an obligation to those who are your employees, whether they be Iraqi or American citizens, and you've got to do what's necessary to ensure their security. And that's a decision that I think they'd have to make. I think it's pretty obvious that a minimal force of 3,000 Americans, soldiers and military, is really not going to be able to do very much of anything.
Who hires the contractors? Is that the Secretary of Defense?
That's a military function, although the State Department does a lot of it as well.
And who oversees it? Who has the obligation here in the U.S. Senate?
I think the
Armed Services?
Armed Services Committee is primary responsibility, and the Appropriations Committee as well.
Do you feel that it's hard for me to think that this is really working well for the American people with the amount of waste and fraud and the fact that it used to be American military, and now we've got these people who I don't know who they answer to. There's no command structure, the civilians, and they're over there in our name.
I can only say that we do exercise oversight. It was an act of Congress that appointed this committee or commission to track down this money, and we have to continue to exercise our oversight responsibilities. It really is harmful, though, and obviously, as you've expressed, it's harmful to American public opinion and support for our efforts there.
Is there any effort to collect the money back from the contractors who have committed the fraud? I realize we can't get it back from the Taliban, but or even prosecute for those. I mean, fraud's a crime.
One of the biggest problems we have in Afghanistan today, besides our problems with Pakistan providing safe haven for the Haqqani network and others, is the corruption at the highest levels of government. And it is an issue that General Petraeus and now General Allen will tell you that they have worked on and worked on and worked on, but it is still a very serious problem.
Senator, thank you, sir.
Thank you.